Out of all the movies announced for Marvel's Phase 4, Black Panther Wakanda Forever was my most anticipated. I was excited to see Ryan Coogler return as director and co-writer of the movie, and just like everybody else, I was curious to see what they were going to do with this franchise after the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman from 2020. This movie does handle that tragedy, but not only that, our characters from Wakanda have to face a new threat, Namor, who is played by Tenoch Huerta. One of my favorite aspects about both of these Black Panther movies is that they solely feel like there's one vision. Overall, they try their best not to tie into other events happening in the MCU. This one does it a little bit more, which I will get into later. This movie does feel like a direct continuation from Coogler's Black Panther with its characters, culture, aesthetic, themes, all of it. As far as performances go, I think the majority of the cast that was handled properly did an excellent job. Many of the scenes that are focused on the passing of T'Challa feel genuine. You can get a real sense of a bond that these characters had with T'Challa, and that's because these actors had a real bond with Boseman. It almost feels therapeutic for them at times when they talk about grief or coming over loss. Not only does that have to do with the characters, this also has to do with Coogler and Joe Robert Cole's writing. I'm sure some of those lines that they put in the script were real to them. They tackle different ways that these characters are mourning. Lupita Nyong'o's character, Nakia, is delightful to watch. What Coogler and Cole did with her character adds layers to how she reacts to loss. You get a sense of what she has learned not only from the repercussions from the first Black Panther movie, but also from the passing of T'Challa. Plus, Nyong'o is just always awesome to see on the screen. She is fantastic in this. I wish her character was a little bit more involved with some of the action pieces. However, I think her character overall was handled very well. Angela Bassett's character, Ramonda, is now queen and ruler of Wakanda. We get a little bit of insight on how this passing has affected the geopolitical aspect outside of Wakanda. It's fascinating to see. It's more so touched on in the beginning of the movie. Shuri, who's played by Letitia Wright, seems to be struggling with the loss of her brother the hardest compared to everyone else. Her humorous wits and jokes aren't as apparent in this movie compared to some of the other films she was in. Some people might see this as a complaint about how the writers and Wright herself might have handled this character. I think it's a little appropriate for the situation. It feels natural and her development is paid off as well. Huerta as Namor is great. I'm not very familiar with the character, but he gives Namor this big boost of confidence that I really like. His character, motivations, and even his introduction fit in this movie organically. The movie takes Namor seriously as well. We never get any dumb jokes about the wings coming out of his feet. He's handled with care, and I wish there were other MCU villains that were handled this way. Those four characters, I think, are handled really well. The other characters I'm about to mention, not so much. The movie is trying to cover a lot because of Boseman's passing. There's the development that we have to focus on for the characters, and we still have to push things forward into the MCU, which is one of my bigger complaints. Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, is naturally introduced in this movie, and I feel like the use of her isn't entirely necessary. She's not the first character in the MCU to have an origin story in somebody else's movie. It even happened with Black Panther and Captain America Civil War. Sometimes origin stories like this work, sometimes they don't. Really just depends who's the writer, how they handle these characters, and I feel like Ironheart is a miss. She's played by Dominique Thorne, who does a fine job with the character. She's kind of used as sometimes comic relief. She just doesn't really add much to the story. Her Ironheart suit is atrocious. It's ugly, and it sticks out compared to everything else that is happening in this movie. It feels like she is one of those characters that was forced into this movie because Kevin Feige said, hey, we need this character so we can get our Ironheart series. Martin Freeman returns as Everett Ross. I really wish he wasn't in the movie at all. His first scene in this movie only feels necessary to further the plot. Everything else is a waste of time. It's just a setup for the Thunderbolts movie, and I don't care about that. I wish these two characters were either cut drastically or just not involved in the movie at all. It would have made the pacing feel faster. It would have made this movie about 2 hours instead of close to 3 hours, because you can definitely feel those 3 hours. Or we could have spent time involving the ideas of imperialism, like with Namor's character, or we could have been a bit more involved with Shuri's internal dilemmas. Okoye's subplot isn't fully realized. It's kind of a waste. It's just supposed to be a little hiccup for our characters in the second act, but there's nothing really about it that causes any conflict. It's just something has to happen with this character. Let's make this happen instead. One of the bigger disappointments, and honestly a waste of time in this movie, is the use of Michaela Coel. She is a talent. She is an amazing actress, and I was so excited to see how her and Coogler were going to collaborate. She maybe only has like 5 to 7 minutes of screen time, and she adds nothing to the story at all. So yeah, this is a movie that has like 12 characters, and I would have cut down to like 6 or 5 characters for the movie to focus on. There are many ideas going on with this movie, and part of that has to do with the writing. You can tell that the script has been reworked and rushed through multiple times. It's not entirely their fault. None of us expected Chadwick Boseman to pass. Overcoming that and making that feel organic was a task of its own, and I think they did a good job on that. But overstuffing the movie with so many other things is what's hurting it. The cinematography looks great, especially when it's filmed on practical sets. The colors feel more vibrant compared to some of the other recent movies I've seen in the MCU, especially compared to Black Panther. Sometimes the usage of the blue screen backdrop feels off. And even though the effects in this movie might seem a little off, they are slightly improved and better compared to the first Black Panther movie, which is one thing that really hurts that movie. I think the main concern, though, with the effects in this movie is that they were probably reshot. There were obviously COVID restrictions going on, and also the effects team was most likely rushed. Some of those effects you have to use because you can't really use anything practical, like Namor's underwater kingdom, Talokan. Again, I wish we got to see more of this kingdom and the ideas of imperialism that are involved with the Talokan and Namor's motivations. It's not as explored well enough as I was hoping it would be. The costumes and the makeup in this movie are so awesome to look at. They are really good. Ruth Carter returned as the costume designer for this movie. The Wakanda Kingdom has costumes that are involved more with Afrofuturism. The Talokan Kingdom and culture are heavily inspired by the Mayans. Their costumes feel like it's a part of that time, but there's still a little bit of futurism going on with it. It still fits in this world. It's really impressive to look at. Ludwig Göransson has returned as the composer for this movie as well, and is killing it with the music again. He brings back old themes and gives us some new ones that involve Shuri and Namor and his kingdom. There's some new things going on, like the usage of vocal sirens and throat singing, and it's awesome. It fits in with the percussion-heavy rhythms. He is definitely one of the most interesting modern composers working today. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is a satisfying movie that honors Chadwick Boseman tenderly and gracefully. Some of those moments from our actors feel genuine, and we get some pretty solid performances from them. The costumes are amazing to look at, the cinematography is good, and the score is just as awesome as the original. The effects are a slight improvement, but some aspects still look rushed and they're not super impressive to look at. The action sequences are fine. Unfortunately, there's really nothing that stands out. The cast and the story is overstuffed. I would have cut out some people from the movie. I would have cut some storylines as well. You can get a sense of the script promptly being altered, which is why a lot of this is happening in the movie. Though it is done with love and care, it does feel like Coogler still had a due date to hit. I wish some of those characters were cut and we got to explore more of Shuri's inner progress. It's sort of developed, but there's really never enough space to breathe and get inside her head. Now, you might say this is a very similar plot to Black Panther and Captain America Civil War, which you're right. So maybe I don't want to see that again. I just think that would have been a bit more interesting than some of the other stuff that was happening in this movie. I feel the same way about Namor's motivations and themes in this movie. I wish it was explored just a little bit more. It's there and it's interesting at times, but it's not enough. I really want to feel for these characters, but the ideas that they're going for just feel a little muddled. I'm ready for Coogler to make something outside of the MCU, but at the same time, I do want him to do at least just one more Black Panther movie. These movies flow together with one singular vision, even if they do try to find ways to tie it into the MCU or push something further into the franchise. It still feels like one cohesive vision. I hope for the third one, there's just a bit more time put into it, and I hope it focuses more on the Wakanda Kingdom, or maybe on the Talokan Kingdom, and not so much as your typical MCU problems where we have to set up 4 other movies and 4 other shows. I am going to give Black Panther Wakanda Forever a 3 out of 5. Alright, thank you so much for watching this. If you made it this far, did you see Wakanda Forever? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Please let me know down below. Let me know what I should review next. If you like what you see, please like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want. Make sure you exercise every day, drink your milk, and have a great day.